Hey, long time no see. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm sorry about it.
I know you had work situation. Jose told me. So we're good. All right. So we are gonna go over chapter 4 and 5 first and the assignment. And then we will pick up with the lab. I am ambitious with the lab, so hopefully we'll get it done. If not, I'll extend the due date. But I want you guys to kind of know some of the main programs that you can use in the field. So let's log in, download your notes and your assignments in your lab. And if you like, you can also download Kali VM for VirtualBox. Sorry, I missed last week. I was not feeling well, and plus I didn't want you to drive in the snow. So it's not safe. Okay. So in this week, we're going to cover vulnerability assessment and vulnerability management. We're going to focus a little bit more on web server and FTP server. I did a similar lab with just FTP in my CIS27 this week. So I'm not doing the exact same thing, but I will show you how you can set up your FTP server and then scan it. Originally I wrote it to scan a web server that's, scanme.org, but it takes a long time. So I want to kind of just for us to understand how to create servers in our Linux machine. That's really important for your field and be able to understand how to use these tools. So to start, we're going to talk a little bit about vulnerability management and the scanners. And there's a lot of emphasis in this area, especially for analysts in cybersecurity, because bless you. So the programs is really built around the type of assessment that you are going to create. A lot of the time we're going to use scanners and we consistently do it, but we have to take a look at the regulation on who requires more regular vulnerability assessment and management. So in management of vulnerability, a lot of the times you start with identifying, and that's when your scanner is going to come in. So once you have your result from your scan, you're going to prioritize. Now, some scanners are really great. So we're going to look at Burp today about giving you the category in prioritization. So you're going to see the critical, the high, the medium, and the low. And that's going to help you understand the state of your infrastructure in the organization. So the vulnerability management really start with identifying, then we prioritize. And the most critical area, we are going to address that first. So based on that, you are going to take a look at the existing vulnerability in your organization. And the effective management programs have these three approaches. First, you scan and you determine your assets. Assets can be system and assets can also be people. But for most of the time, we would go back to inventory to really determine what type of systems we have and what kind of vulnerability they have. Hello, how are you doing?
Started today.
Yeah, sorry about last week. Then you will determine the workflow on how to fix, to remediate, or to remove the vulnerability. And you will continue to perform asset management because we grow, right? We add new systems, we remove systems, we add new services. So we have to continue to manage the assets along with their vulnerability for the enterprise. And this is a very challenging area, right? That makes this job very high in demand. So when you answer the questions, for number one, we ask, why is vulnerability management important in the organization? It is because it helps the organization understand its current state in security by identifying, prioritizing, remediating vulnerabilities before the attacker exploiting them. And their target is to undermine confidentiality, integrity, and availability of the assets in the organization. So we have to be ahead of the game, right? Continue vulnerability management programs will allow you to predetermine the potential of attacks, the potential of exploitation, and how that impact your resources and your assets. So in the security area, we really focus on identifying, that could be manual or using tools, prioritizing, right? Whether you qualify or quantify, but we want to address the most critical areas and remediating vulnerabilities. So the approaches in building effective management program, we want to really look at the following areas, right? I forgot to highlight this in purple. We want to periodically scan the enterprise assets for vulnerability. And that could be your IoT devices, your desktops, your laptops. Hi, how are you doing? Your servers and anything that's connected to your network or providing services to people. So today we're going to address web servers and FTP. And those are only the two small areas in the enterprise. You have databases, you have application server, there are other areas, but we have to periodically scan, and we're going to look at the regulated requirements. We want to regularly use a defined workflow to remediate the vulnerability. And workflow really describes the process in how we would start with removing or accepting some of the vulnerabilities. There are some that don't have fixes, so we are not going to be able to address those, right? As we would use, for example, OS have quite a few. We would updates, right? We would run updates to reduce some of the issues, but a lot of the times we can't fully address some of the areas. The third approach is to perform continuous assets management. That means that you can do it quarterly, you can do it biannually, or monthly, or even weekly. It really depends on how high some of your critical areas is having some form of vulnerability. So the ranking in your vulnerability against your assets is where you would need to continue to perform the management. That means that we would go back to the first question, identify, prioritize, and remediate. And those are the three things that is really built around the processes for the workflow. Okay, any questions? And you can find all of this information also. I just summarize it so that way it's easier. Okay. So coming back to the notes, and I'll put it back again for those of you who are still looking at these. So we have to really look at some of the compliance and the type of requirements that come with them, right? So industry falls into different categories. HIPAA, we are very aware of this. This is for healthcare or any type of company that handles healthcare information. So insurance company, right? Medical offices, anytime that you provide some form of healthcare services, along with organization that's handling some form of documents that healthcare related. Then you have the GLBA, Gramm-Leach-Ribley Act. This is for financial systems. Most companies have financial systems. right, to handle transactions, especially banking industry. They work mostly in the GLBA. Then you got the payment card industry data security standard, PCI DSS. Recall that this is just a standard, right? But they do have their requirements. So PCI DSS require that you scan vulnerabilities 4 times a year. So we need to increment it in every 3 months or more, right? So if you do it monthly, that will meet the requirement. If you do it 4 times a year, that meets the minimum requirement. Now, for Sarbanes-Oxley Act, this been integrated since the 80s. It's because of the downfall of Enron. And it's really looking at financial reporting and the protection of financial data for the publicly traded company, the companies that are on the stock market. So anytime that you're looking at companies that have stock sharing and how they're reporting, right? They do quarterly reporting. So we need to protect their financial data within the organization. And when you look at the document, it can be a lot, right? So NIST and COBIT, they build frameworks to be able to implement different procedures and workflow for the areas of vulnerability management. The people in the industry already have templates for you, right? They already have a way for you to address these problems. You just got to know how to use those templates and the workflow. And then also you can buy the solution out of the box. Many security companies sells that, right? So depending on the area, so as you know, PCI DSS, transactional type of data needs to be monitored, okay? Now, in SOX, it require testing of control, and this is actually the verbiage, right? This umbrellas a lot of things. So if for the company that operates like Facebook, Google, you know, Microsoft, you name it, Coca-Cola, all of the companies that are on the stock trading or the stock market, what you see is that they have to implement testing and control. And that can be vulnerability assessment, ethical hacking, a lot of the other areas that we do in cybersecurity. Now for healthcare, for HIPAA, there are other requirements as far as encryption use, how you sense the data, how your data is retained, but there are not specific requirement in the area of vulnerability scanning, but it doesn't hurt to do it, okay? Any questions? And then you have FiSMA, right? FiSMA is for government agency like DMV, right? FBI, anybody that's related to the Federal Information Security Agency. What you have is you have these type of requirements. So they do require vulnerability management program. If you read through their document, it comes up a few times. And then controls based on the standards. You have to manage risk. So these are some of the things that I highlight. When I did my graduate program, both master's and doctorate, I took like many classes for compliance. It really addressed for the CIO level. So they really pound this into you by the end of your bachelor and going into your graduate program if you do. Okay, so let's go through the questions again, right? So which standard for number 3 and regulation require vulnerability management? We see that in the notes, you see that PCI DSS, payment card industry data security standard. The companies that provide POS systems and retain those data, banks, right? Banking industry, they use payment cards like Visa, MasterCard, American Express, Discover, those things. And PCI DSS require that you do 4 times a year at the minimum. Most companies do the minimum because it costs, right? Vulnerability scanning is not like you can just do it on the fly, right? You have to make sure that you're not clogging the bandwidth. And so we would schedule these things, but we do monitor, we do live monitor it, right? Or you can outsource it to a security company where they have analysts like yourself in the future to monitor this on 24/7. Okay. And then you have AI systems that are looking at behavior, right? Looking at anomalies, things that are irregular to really detect, block, and everything else. And then the second compliance body that requires is your FiSMA, requires vulnerability management program, which umbrella is scanning, right? It covers the scanning and the approaches. So for the analyst, not that you have to perform the scan, but you have to derive the report and you have to remediate, right? You have to come up with solution and tell the specialist and the security professional on how to fix some of the problem. And that's what we do, is we really sell our knowledge and our skills in that sense, in this industry. Any question? Now, you cannot disregard the country, the state, the geolocation of the company. So when you're looking at like the European based country, they also have some restrictions and some regulations. So we want to also focus on the country, the state, or is sometimes even the city that they operate in. So you have to really work all of that in and be able to find a solution for vulnerability management. Okay, so make sure that we know the compliance, because that's gonna come up with and then the requirements, okay? Because the certification might ask you about PCI DSS or FiSMA, because those are stated in their document for regulation. Okay, so let's come back here. And I listed some of the bullets for you. So you would have a chart like this. Okay, we have the 3 goals: confidentiality, integrity, and availability, and how you rank them. So in a table like this, you would have low, moderate, or high, sometimes, 5 categories, but this is the common one, right? This is provided with your textbook. And in it, you want to really define, right, the low, the moderate, the high level of the impact based on CIA, okay? And then this allows you to work it into a matrix where you would have a table and you would list your assets. So if I have in a very large enterprise, so let's think about, like, let's take Coca-Cola, for example. The corporate is in Atlanta, right? They have offices everywhere, right? And so annually, a lot of times they do inventory management, but we have to also tie this back into the systems, the assets. So you're going to focus on the assets that have higher impact in CIA first, and then you go down. Okay. So I put down the link for you here for Federal Information Processing Standard. And then I also indicated the publication 853. And sometimes they do the revision, and you would have the revision number there for FiSMA, right? If you ever contract with DoD, that's basically where you deal with. I previously worked with DoD, so this is a lot of the areas that they need to address, right? Military, government, those things. And here are some of the things that you need to do in this for privacy control. And it's really hitting like some of the things that we do: scan vulnerability and deploy the tools. And then you need to do automation, okay? Scripting comes in handy for that. Then you analyze the report, then you remediate. That's basically the analyst's job right there, right? Use the tools, get some results, determine what the results mean, and then fix, okay? And then you share the information to executive manager and all of those people that make the decision to really, produce more of like how we operate, at least above the baseline. Most people operate in the baseline because it's cheap. Yeah. All right. Yeah.
You know, there's two certificates for cybersecurity specialist and analyst. So would the specialist role be all of that minus the saying how you could fix it or do better?
Yeah, so the specialists are the first responder. Those are the ones that deals with the incident, right? Your analyst is operating at a higher level. You have more of a choice in the decision-making process. You actually tell them what to decide, right? So when you see things like system analysts or business system analysts or security analysts, a lot of times we look at data and then we say, okay, based on this evidence, this is what you do, okay? So we scan and then we provide. The specialists, they can scan, right? They produce report, but a lot of times it goes to the next level, which is the analyst. So analyst makes more money and we usually use the skills to apply to the decision-making process more. The specialist is just like, if you have an attack, they stop it. Yes.
When an organization follows let's say example in this framework, doesn't that void liability in case of a breach? They establish due diligence?
Yeah, so they go through, there's a checklist, and if you follow everything that NIST tells you, you get certified, right? So sometimes you see like COVID certified or NIST compliant certified. And there are some professional organizations specialize in that, right? They certify you. They have an auditor that comes in, right? Like basically an analyst that comes in and tell you what to do, right? Fix this, fix that, because they scan and you can be that, right? Consultants like me, right? Or you could be, you can work for a company and they send you as an outside auditor. And we would come in and we would tell them, this is the problem, fix this. And a lot of times they have their internal IT security team, but sometimes their team, in certain regulation, they have to have an external audit.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in some cases, you have to have an external audit and we can operate. And so there is, if you are, I will talk about ISACA later. There's a class especially for auditing. Mr. Loya used to really love that area, right? But once you pass that certification, you can enroll yourself as an external auditor for the national. And so if you like to travel, that's the deal, right? But this industry, this type of things, you are going to travel, usually at least 40 to 80%. That's common, right? So if you want to see, different areas and things like that, but yeah, it's a good point. So there are, so I highlighted the 10 things here, right? That's going to get addressed. A lot of times it's going to help us progress. There always is some form of resistance because it's cost, but you have to really show the impact. And that's what we're doing is we use the matrix to really show business manager why it's like this, right? Like why 1980 server should not be used anymore. Things like that. Okay. So let's talk about your target. Let's go into the next part of your questions. Okay, so based on FiSMA requirement, how should vulnerability assessment be implemented in federal agency? We know that information systems and hosted applications are scanned for vulnerability to determine enumerating platforms, software flaws, and improper configuration. These things are important. The reason why I say hosted application is a lot of the companies now use AWS, Azure, and other cloud products, right? So when you have the contract for cloud, before people used to say, oh, I have Cloudflare, I have, this great product. I'll just let them manage their security. Not exactly that. That's not the contract. Now, a lot of the contract is either you're half responsible or you're solely responsible for your information. If you just rent space in someone's server, it's kind of like rent your storage. If you don't lock your storage and your stuff is in there, it could be gone, right? So if you rent space, like cloud space, you have to maintain your cloud space. And it could be hosted by other people. Hosting just means that you're using their space on their server racks. It doesn't always mean that, so really looking at your service license agreement, your contract, and looking at what area you're responsible for. Is it 100%? Is it 50%? Is it 75%? Yeah.
For cloud storage, is the main vulnerability the transmission to the cloud?
Sometimes, so cloud company, they protect their resources too, but they're not solely responsible for your information, right? Because your customer and your client access your information. So it doesn't always mean that, they're gonna protect their system, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're gonna protect your data, right? So let's say that they put up a firewall for people to stop attacking the system. But then if your data is infected coming in, you can't. So they're gonna back up and they're gonna say, oh, you lost your data? Oh, we protected our system, but you didn't protect your data. You didn't encrypt your data. You have employees that's stealing your data. We're not responsible for that, right? So you really have to take a look. And then people buy cybersecurity insurance. That's big right now, right? They're on stock exchange too, some of the companies. But you have to take a look at, just like your car insurance, what's gonna be the return, right? So if let's say I have ransomware, if I'm being attacked, if I lost my data, I make a claim, right? Are they gonna cover at a certain percentage? And they really gonna state in the condition, what are they gonna cover, right? Just like how you get in a car accident, they're gonna tell you, this is your responsibility, you have to do the copay, and then we pay some. We pay like 50% or even less, right? So you're gonna have to take a look at a lot of the times what you have on your system.
Would on-premise be another solution instead of that?
Yeah, but it's very expensive, right? You have to have the people, you have to have the machines, and then you have to get more machines. Yeah, and a lot of companies, they outsource this because there are companies that already have all the equipment and the people, right? They just pay for the service. That's also a transferable risk, right? So if I have you do my work, if you don't do your work, then it's totally your fault, right? That's a contract that we agree upon. So a lot of the companies, they pay big bucks for security company to come in or to manage their resources. And yeah, but is it gonna be 100% safe? Not necessarily, right? It's just somebody else is doing the work. If they get attacked, you get attacked, right? So, okay, so in the targets, what are they really targeting? And this is some of the critical areas that you need to look for. Where your data is classified and stored. So your file servers, right? Your backup servers, data classification is very crucial, right? So basically you have to categorize your data into different things. I normally first break it down into 3 things. Data in motion, stuff that's web-based, right? I focus on that separately. Data at rest, basically your backup data, your stored data, your archive data, and the data that's being used, the currently modifiable data by your internal people. And then within that, I would classify it. And some, the government-based classification, you've seen this public data, everything is available. You can see that, right? And sometimes company transition from private data to public data over a period of time. So you have to take a look at, where is your private data stored? And also your public and other type of data stored. How is it processed and transmitted? Right? Going to what I said about the 3 categories before, or for the 4 categories. And then how things are connected, your system. Is it public, semi-public, or private system? So when you DMZ things in the network diagram, a lot of your stuff in the DMZ area, it's public and somewhat not, right? Your web server is public. FTP server might be public. Some web server is not public. Like if you have intranet, then that server is not public. So you have to go through your asset list and you're gonna say, oh, this server is public, this server is not, this server is private. And then you have to take a look at how they're connected, right? To really identify which target you're gonna scan. And I normally go through and I look at the critical area based on the impact. Okay, so you have like this chart that's like 3-dimension. You have to go through and check high level impact, critical. Those are the things that you're going to focus on your vulnerability assessment first. Then the type of services you offer, right? Whether it's retail or some other form of service, and the impacted system for those services. Because if I'm an online retail company, I offer transaction, that's electronics, right? My database is publicly available somewhat for pricing and products. And if those things go down, nobody buys my products, right? So you have to take a look at those. And then your system role. This is important in hierarchy. If you understand, like, you know, there are parent servers and there's child domains and then there's the subdomains. So you have to take a look at how that plays into production. So when we say production, that means that the things that are used for operation, right? Like if I'm a retailer online, the servers and the systems that's used to sell my products. If I'm a manufacturing company, that could also be my warehousing system and also for logistic and then the manufacturing machines. Okay, so there's so many things that come into play. So, and then testing, right? Some company they do R&D for testing and development. Okay, so those are, this is a very generalized area and it could be thousands of things. So, okay. Okay, any questions? Okay, so now when you looking at so here are your targets, you need to take a look at your inventory. There are great tools in the field for inventory. Nessus is one of them, right? A license for Nessus for professional is about $1,200 and up. Okay, so when companies, they're gonna have like maybe 1 or 2 license on a certain system. That's what they're gonna use. They're not gonna have hundreds, right? You can get a free license to practice. And I tried to do this as a lab before. It's just not gonna work here. It's gonna take hours, but you know that all our scans take hours. Okay, so just make sure that if you use, so you just have to, you know, do the free trial, or I think there used to be a home version. I think they updated it to a trial version. So you fill out your information, you add your email account, and then they'll send you your access link via your email account. So there used to be another product from Spiceworks, but let me find it again. Long ago when I taught vulnerability assessment, it's really great at assets management. So what it does is it pings all the system. And then when the ping comes back, it generates an automated list based on system name and IP address. That's what you want. Okay. And then you can export it out to CSV file, which is Excel. And then you go through and you do the ranking. Now, some software already does that for you, like this one. Okay. So it basically pings on the connected system and it's using network management protocol to be able to identify them, like especially your switches and routers. And then it creates a list and it ranks it. Okay, which is great. And then when you look at Burp today, you're going to see that it's going to scan, it's pre-scan, and then, you know, in the different category, and it's going to tell you like what's critical and what's not. So it's pretty cool. So when you scan, there's active scan. Most of our tools are active scan. When you scan something, that means that they can see you. Okay, so when you do like stealth ethical hacking, use the passive scanning first and then mask yourself for the active scanning. So the attacker, they are going to find stuff with the passive scanner, like Wireshark and, you know, some of the sniffers. There are active scanner. Now, when you're using Nmap, it's semi-active. That means that the IDS, the IPS, the firewall going to see you and it's going to kick you out. Okay. So sometime you get blocked. So if you get hired as an external analyst and they tell you scan our system, always expect that they already have these in place, right? You can attempt it, and if you get blocked, you have to find your other ways in. Okay, so use tools. You need to really take a look at the scope of the scan. So in your engagement, do not scan until they permit you, right? Written permission, sign and date. It will tell you the scope. So for example, in the enterprise, let's take Coca-Cola, for example, they want you to only look at HQ system, and that's all you're gonna do, okay? You do not scan additional things, even though your scanner is gonna say, oh, I detect this and this and this. Don't look, okay? Only focus on the scope, because if you violate that, right, you violate their policy and they can take you to court for it. So just be careful with that. Yeah, gray area. Okay. So let's answer the next part here. Okay, so we already talked about 5. The what type of information is used to determine the frequency of your scans, right? In your notes, it talks about the risk appetite, the level of willingness to tolerate risk. Some company will take higher risks than other, right? Then that could be varied from system to system, or one part of the network to the next, or the company itself. Regulatory requirements. What kind of rules or laws are they following? Corporate policy, internal policy is always important. Okay. Technical constraints, the limitation in their systems. So if I have a company that has limited network bandwidth, I have to really think about how I want to scan, what kind of scan tool I use, okay? Because it's gonna throttle the bandwidth. Because some tools are very aggressive, right? Nmap, if you want to scan aggressive, you just do a -A and boom, it's aggressive. Okay, that means it's just gonna ping more, it's gonna generate more traffic. So you have to think about like the type of tools and when you scan, right? And how often you scan. Business constraint, licensing limitations, like I said before about Nessus, right? A lot of the time we scan during off hours, so work perfectly if you're like a night owl like me. All right. Okay, we got these. So for 7, what's the difference between active and passive scan? I'm just gonna summarize that here for you. The active scanner interact with the host to find services and vulnerability. The passive scanner acts as monitors, and they kind of look at what's going on, right? It's used similar techniques as your intrusion detection system. It looks at the signature, the outdated system, the applications, the report results, and it gives that to the administrator. So the analogy of this is, if I am a passive scanner, right, like as a person, I just sit and watch everybody passes by and see who could be a potential problem, right? If I'm an active scanner, I'm gonna go and say hi to everyone. Hey, what's up, right? Are you a problem? And then, or talk to that person and find out if there are issues, right? So the active scanner interact with the system more, and this is why it's noisy. It is detectable. Where a passive scanner just watches, okay? So is it effective? Well, passive scanners are good at finding broader information. If you want to drill down to more specific, active scanners are the tools to use. And you can use it with its scripts or its, extension. All right. And then for question 8, it says, how should security professional determine the scope of vulnerability scan? Base the scope on the amount and type of system in the network. And I answered this from a technical perspective, not a business perspective, okay? I already gave you the business perspective, what's signed in the contract, what they allow you to do, right? Even internally as an analyst, your manager, your CIO is gonna tell you, oh, I only want you to scan the database, and that's what you're gonna do. Okay, don't look more. But from a technical standpoint, you're gonna look at the amount and the type of your system, the type of measurement in those systems, and the type of tests that can be performed on those systems. Because, database uses different things, web application uses different things. So today I'm gonna give you a little bit from my side. So you're gonna get a little bit of web application that's abundant. Everybody uses web. So if you know the tools and you know the resources, your skills is in higher demand, right? Everybody knows networking. In my opinion, most security professionals start with networking, like myself, and then you work your way towards other things. So if you have programming background, you have scripting background, that's a plus. Okay. And so ultimately, we want to scan to build out our comprehensive vulnerability management program. And you want to have a variety of scan, because the variety of scan results are going to give you the outside, the inside, a lot of different views, and some scanner will pick up what other scanners do not detect, right? False positive, false negative scanner. Some are like, oh, the sky is falling, right? And then the other scanners are like, oh, I don't see that. So you are going to use a variety of tools. And so what you want to do is you should have a tool belt. And I tell all my students this when they go into the field. That means that the common tools that we use, great. There are certain scripts that you write or you find, and certain tools that you use for specific things. You make note of it and you want to have that on your VM or on your laptop or on your system, be ready, right? So, and then you want to keep up with those tools, because as you know, Linux tools always update. There's always some fixes. So you want to maintain those tools over time. Okay, so variety of scan is going to provide you results in different locations of the network to really identify internal and external vulnerability in your network. And it also gives you views on the threat actors, could be internally or externally. As we just talked about what kind of updates we need, right? You want to run regular updates on your tools. For Linux system, every time that you have application, right before you install, you should update the OS itself. And then it will allow you to update the application with it. That's the nice thing about it. For the Windows-based tool, you just update the apps and sometime your OS. You also want to have additional plugins. Yes.
Part of CVEs, the identification numbers
for the common vulnerabilities. Yeah, CVEs uses CVSS, which is a scoring system. So when there is a vulnerability that's found and recorded, it's assigned an identifier, a number. And they use the CVSS, the scoring system, to rank it, right? So Mitre and other companies, they maintain, right, a large database of it. So things like in software, a lot of the time, software company, they're liable for just to track their bugs. And then when it becomes a huge vulnerability that they need to report it, so that's who they send it to. Okay, so you want to patch and then have plugins and updates. And so what are some of the scans that you can schedule monthly? You should have an ongoing scan. And that could be like, once a month, twice a month, weekly, depends on how critical, how essential for your operations, right? And that's what our reports really says. If you have a brand new company, they don't have any data, you have to perform the scan and you tell them. But you have existing company, they have data, right? They have auditing data, they have data for their monitoring system, they have network performance data. So you would be able to kind of build out some idea on how often you should scan. So ongoing scans are scheduled scans. That's usually monthly or very regularly. And then once you scan, how should you report? You should report based on the priorities level. Okay. And mostly based on the criticality of the vulnerability that's impacting your operation or your production. So if I am, let's say if I am Starbucks, right? My production system or my retail systems, my equipment machines that make coffee and sell coffee. Or drinks, I should say, because it's not Starbucks coffee anymore, it's beverage. But if I am like Amazon, right, my production system can be a vast of things because they have cloud products, they have, there are a lot. So for a company that encompasses a lot of different things, you have to really kind of dissect it and look at, right, the critical system in sub area, right? What's good for AWS, what's critical for retail, and so on. So after we have the report and our levels, right? Let's say you have high critical level. You have a list of those vulnerabilities. How should you remediate it, right? You should look at the highest one based on the critical levels and the difficulty of remediation, because sometimes, even if it's highly critical, you might not have a fix or a solution for it, right? You have to research it. You have to look for it. You have to ask other companies to assist you, like your vendor, right? Your partner. And based on the severity level and the potential of exploitation of the vulnerabilities. So those are like the general area that we really use to prioritize our remediation tactic. Any question? I know that if you go for this certification or other related certification like CISSP, a lot of times they address this. So it's going to come back up again. So for web apps vulnerability assessment, what kind of technique do you use? And the book talks about fuzzing. You probably hear fuzzing a lot in the industry. That's very common. Okay. But we can also use vulnerability scanner for web app. So Burp Suite, we're gonna touch a little bit on it. I'll find other opportunity to write it in. I want to give you like how you can install and at least like start it with proxy. But you can brute force, you can do a lot with it. And it has a graphical user interface. It's not just in command line, but we'll use other tools as well. Qualys, there's Qualys. I think we've seen that before when we use the recon stuff. And then we are going to use Nikto today. So the type of tools for your web application. Let me move this up a little bit so we can have it all together. So for web app, because everybody has websites, right? Interaction on websites. So you would need to, so for vulnerability assessment, you use Nikto. Proxy interception, Burp Suite is good for that, or you can use Z-Attack Proxy. If you have to deal with, password and proxy and other things, Burp Suite is good because it encompasses many tools, but web-based tools, even for database stuff. For wireless assessment, in the case for wireless, I threw some in there. Aircraft NG been around forever. It does Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. And then you have Reaver. Hashcat is very popular for the NCL students. Hashcat has been around, I don't know, decades. Okay. Why are we using Hashcat and aircraft and all of that? Because it's ultimately we're really looking at what? Encryption, right? Wi-Fi encryption, hash for keys for encryption, and so on. So proxy attacks are a little different. Sometimes you can use it to make fake proxy, right? Sometimes you take over the proxy. It really depends on the type of tools you use. So proxy, think of it like a middleman, right? You can set up proxy to divert your traffic. It's kind of like, I have construction in Moreno Valley right now. There's a lot. You can have detours, different detours to get to different destinations. And proxies, you can set up proxy server to handle some of your traffic. Some company have thousands and hundreds, some company have a few. So what you can do with proxy is you can intercept traffic. And once you intercept traffic, you can stuff packets, you can learn the cookies, you can do SQL injection, you can be man in the middle. There are tons of things that you can do with proxy, and it's so lovely. So the next level analysts, right? Network analysts are great. Security network analysts are great. And I started there too. Network knowledge is really wonderful too, but I think this is where a lot of the operation happens, right? Payment transactions, purchases, sending data, a lot of movement happens there. I think the book gives you some tools. I added some in your notes. So we'll have some opportunity to come back and look at the Wi-Fi side. Maybe we'll do a little bit of Bluetooth or Wi-Fi. I'm always skeptical about showing students this because I was like, yeah, don't be driving around and and started getting into people's routers and things. Knowledge is powerful. How you use it is different, right? Okay. So sorry, let me take you back to your notes real quick. Okay, so I show a little bit of things like how you can disable your plugins. Sometimes you need to disable your plugins or add new plugins. Nessus have some additional plugins, but a lot of the software that you see, your network scanners like Wireshark, a lot of those are really cool too. And then you can also use some of the scan to look at credentials, right? And if you took 27A with me, you've seen this before. So, and then we talked about scan perspective, depending on the regulation, you have to do the maintenance. So this is the workflow: test, detect, and remediate. Those are the three things that the analyst always does, okay? Ongoing versus continuous scan, make sure we know the difference for certification. Okay, continuous mean monitor, ongoing is scheduled on the regular basis. Okay, so it talks about how you can remediate. We touched on this before. You can also do testing with sandbox. VMs are really good for that, but isolate, do not connect. Okay, if you do connect to a system that don't connect to the rest of the network, so you can test the side effects or the impact for the behavior. Yeah, I've done a couple sandboxes for things, but a lot of times like employers or my clients just want to see like how that would be if they roll it into their production. So sandboxing sometimes is not as severe as what you think, but they just want to like either accept the risk or transfer it. So they want to see how that would be. So yeah, I did two and we did the comparison on that. So yeah, like they wanted to roll this one web application. And when I assessed it, I said, this is the issue, right? Like if you roll this is going to come up. So they wanted to see how that would be, if they fix it and what's the cost. And so, so I ran it with the fix, and then if they just, have somebody host it and maintain it and accept the risk. So yeah, so you can do that too. All right. Also, I gave you the link here. Qualys, Rapid7, Tenable, and OpenVAS. These are the top 5 or 4. 4. I thought I had 5, but okay, 4 that you see in the industry. if we don't come around and get to all of this, I know I touch on this in my Python CIS30C, which hopefully they'll let me run in the fall. But you know, check these out because sometimes some classes don't address them. If I don't get to address them, make sure that you test them. You can use the free trial version. They all have free trial version and use it, okay? And then I list some of the tools here for you and the link. Reaver, you can find it. It's probably better to find it through like Kali Linux and things like that. If you start looking around some websites, a lot of the time Reaver can be found from like dark web and other links in forums, things like that. Okay, so here shows you the CVSS for the score ranking, the complexity. So let's get to that part because you probably want to know how to calculate these things. Now, we're not going to manually calculate a lot of this. There's a calculator that's made, but I want to show you how you can. Okay, so how do you score? So it's for 17, it says, given the following score, determine the impact subscore for the vulnerability interpretations. If your confidentiality score, let's say the scanner, this is what it gives you, is 0.65, which is 65%. The integrity is 35% impacted. The availability is nothing. Sometimes it doesn't impact availability. So to determine your ISS, you're going to take 1 and you're going to take each of those and you're going to subtract them by 1 and then multiply. So I'm going to take 1 minus 0.65 for confidentiality, multiply it by 1 minus the integrity percentage times 1 minus the availability. So my ISS, once you have multiplied it all out, it's about 77% or 0.77. So that's the overall, right? So that's the subscore for vulnerability interpretations. So when you're looking at confidentiality, that's the highest area, right? The C. And that was mostly impacted. Compared to integrity, availability has none impacted. So what you see is, you see that based on the overall, this is considered what? Somewhat high, okay? Now, let's say that when you use the result for the previous question, which is 0.7725, we can round it off, right? Or we can just leave it as is. We want to look at the impact subscore and we want to calculate that with the changes in, without changes in the scope. Let's say that your scope remains the same. There's no creep, there's no, you know, it doesn't reduce or grow. And on the website, it shows you how you can count. This is from their equation, their formula, right? So the 6.42 is a constant. Okay, so you're going to take that constant and you're going to multiply it by your ISS score or your ISS. So I take a 6.42, multiply it by 0.7725. I have an impact of 4.96. I'm teaching you this now because, you know, this is good, useful information for resume. And you can impress employers, right? You know, a student coming in, you know how to calculate your impact subscore. Some people, it takes a master degree to get here. Okay. CYSA class, I really think is really addressed for like, it. You know, at Cal State San Bernardino, they do have a similar class. I think it's upper division. I tried to really push for articulation, but they don't let me. But, you know, get the certification and go test out the class. That tell them I already passed the certification. I'll take your final exam and then get the credit. Right? And Dr. Kusin, if he asked, tell him I said so. Just kidding. Any question? So now you know a little bit. So practice. right? Go back, look at the note, look at the equation. I put some link on there for you to access your calculator. You can play with the calculator. It's basically a web form. You fill it out and you click and it calculates it for you.
Pretty much, the closer it gets to one, the more the severity of the issue.
Yes. So the 0.77 is the overall for the CIA, right? Yeah, but the majority of the remediation is gonna happen in the confidentiality area. And then we're gonna take a look at those systems that have mostly impacted in confidentiality based on our assets and our matrix, right? When you go through and you're ranking them based on for your operation. And that's how you're gonna come up with the solutions for the most critical.
Is out of the three, is one of them more, does it weigh more? I guess,
Yes,
would that be, I know it's that be confidentiality.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's highly impacted because it's higher in number. So the higher the score, the no good it is. Or the most weak it is, right? Because if you read right here, it's impact subscore, it's highly impacted compared to availability not impacted. So I don't have to worry about availability, but I need to worry about confidentiality and the next integrity. Sometimes it could be both at once, depending on the type of system and the service, right? All right. So this one is a little different. We are going to calculate the exploitability score given the following information. Your attack vector score is 8.8. Your attack complexity score is 0.77. That could be you or the attacker, right? Your privileges required score is 0.8. So in order to attack, I have to have some privilege, right? User rights in the system. And user interaction score is 0.5. So your exploitability subscore is you're gonna take 8.22, a constant, you're gonna multiply it by attack vector, attack complexity, privilege required, and user interaction, all the four. And once you multiply it out, you're gonna have 3.04. Okay. Statistic and basic algebra gets you through security, okay? Seriously. There are some stuff that requires higher math, like when you're looking at encryption algorithm and other things and mappings but mostly the things that we need to know, basic math and statistic, that's what you need. Okay. You don't have to be a physicist, only if you want to like design or build things, right? Okay, so then we want to calculate the impact score. We take the impact score from number 18 and the exploitability score. We're going to calculate the CVSS, which gives us the bless you. So the score is going to go against the scale, basically what CVSS use, and use the categorical scale to determine if the CVSS score is none, low, medium, high, or critical. And in the notes, I give you the breakdown, also the link information to this. So I take my number 18 result, which is my ISS. I put it with my exploitability score, so I add it. I get a sum, which is 8.00. And that's going to be high. And their scale, right? So 0 is like, not detectable. It's not really, they can't determine if it's a vulnerability or not, right? And so it won't be impacted. 10 is like the highest, right? So when you get 8, between 8 and 10, that's high. And then so you have different range in the scale, and you can take a look at that. So now once we have the score, right, we interpret it, we translate it to, layman terms, forgive me. But yeah, so plain English for people to understand, for business, and then you gotta really take a look at how that impact the business. So you gotta weight that into the dollar, right? Like if I don't fix this, if we're down for a day, this is the amount of money you're gonna lose. Okay, so you take a look at their gross annually, and then break it down to the daily, and this is on the business side. You're gonna say, oh, if we're down for a month with the system, then this is the amount of money lost. And so they'll respond quickly, right? But this is the amount of money that we're gonna invest, and then the ROI in that. So some business sense in this when you report it to executive, that's gonna be helpful. And then for 21, how should a cybersecurity, I should say professional, I forgot that, reconcile the result? Reconcile the vulnerability results. So how do we reconcile? We would refer to resources or sources like logs, CM log, right? Your centralized CM, that's a management system for security. We're gonna look at their log entries, configuration management system to look at, how things are configured, the settings. And then you need to prove the facts. You need to give proof that these issues exist. And that's what I meant, to prove the facts of existing issues. And everything is recorded. Everything is, so if there's weaknesses, sometime that could be in configuration, right? Sometime that could be from an event. Or it would record it in the events actually, like it will give you warnings, things like that. So we would look at logs. In Windows Event Viewer, right? In Linux, you generate log files for different things. And you took my 27 class, we did this. But if you haven't, you can watch my lab 1 video on YouTube. I show how to do that in Linux. Some logs, not all the logs. Okay. Any questions? Oh, I forgot 22. What can be done to prevent session hijacking? I think some part at the end, the book talk about like how we can deal with session hijack or other issues that's web related. You basically use encryption for your network session. Now, HTTPS, most of the products out there use TLS, okay, or SSH. So what you have is you have TLS, which, most of the time you guys are familiar with HTTPS, where you log into for your banking or secure web-based type of session, right? Is it really fully secured? No, it still use some form of encryption. So encryption is very broad. You really determine the type of products based on your need. But the downside of encryption is it can slow down your service, okay? Imagine if you need to log into the bank and it takes you like 5 minutes. Nobody wants to do it, right? They'll leave that bank and go into another bank. So you have to really think about like, is that solution feasible for operation? So we weight the risk on that, right? Yeah, we're using a product that's somewhat secure, but it's not. So you have to analyze that product and say, oh, it's going to meet 80% of our requirements. And that's good. Or less, yes.
I'm not related, but I have a curious question regarding Joe's sandbox. What exactly does it use to give a hash value to a virus or malware? Like, does it use the behavior? Does it use the script?
Sometimes it by default, all files have a hash. All files, right? MD5. mostly. Unless it's, and when you fingerprint, you see it. You know, when you run like hash ID, you see it. So, but you can also give it another hash based on what you want to look at, right? So a lot of times malware is a file, right? So it has some form of hash already. And in some cases, yeah, it could be signature. A lot of the times it's signature hash. Okay. Or some kind of property of it. It really depends. You have to take a look. Is it a logic bomb? Is it a, so yeah, so in the case where if you're looking at an impacted malware file, it's really taking a look at the integrity of the file, right? Like what it is originally as a hash compared to what's changed as a value. And that's how it can determine if something has had done something to it. So if I have hash, let's say 2A, and then, my file that I didn't really touch, something automatically go in there and modify it, it becomes B6. Yeah, it's gonna match it. It's gonna say, oh, something happened. That's how it can tell. Sometimes they can't even find like what was done to it. Then they have to reverse engineer it. So when you sandbox it, you first, we compare the hash, right? We do the comparison. And in forensics, sometimes they do it at the low level, and then you get the binary file. Then you gotta go through the binary file, and then you gotta work your way back up to what was done, right? So a lot of the times, reverse engineer people, they would go through section of the file. For let's say if they're looking at the malware, they would go through each of the section, because at the low level, everything is in binary. Sometimes malware is written in assembly, low level language. Oh, lots of things. Assembly is wonderful. That's what I tell my computer science student. You can take over mouse and keyboard. You can take over hardware. You can write firmware, driver, browser, component of OSs through assembly language.
That's what assembly is a language.
ASM.
ASM. So as an example, that document right there has a hash value already.
Oh yeah.
Oh, so they just, as soon as the file is generated, hash value right there.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, when you store a file, it has a hash. Depending, and also file system, every file system could be different, like compare FAT to, NTFS to ext4. So, it's just a way that it really take a look at I don't want to say attribute, but the file itself, the existence of the file in the system. So and we can capitalize on that, saying that, oh, well, this is the file, and then so if you encrypt that file, right, you basically apply your hash key. Your hash is really applied to the key that's used to encrypt the file. So in some cases, like last time when we did the lab, we generate a hash for an additional hash for that file. But when you fingerprint it, you see two. You see the original hash, which is in MD5, and then you see the SHA-256, which is what we gave it. So you can generate a hash for it and then compare it, right, when you generate another hash later on. So let's say I generate the hash with SHA-256 now. A month from now, I regenerate it. It should be the same, right? If it doesn't matter, it's if everything stay intact.
So let's say you had an exclamation point here, and you try to make it a month from now, it's gonna be a different value.
Oh yeah, it's
So
been
just
modified.
even the littlest things change the value.
Yeah, so and sometimes some cases it doesn't change the content. It could also modify attribute of it. So the hash itself encompasses the properties of the file and the nature of the file. So, it's kind of like seeing you are as this entire person versus what's inside you, what you eat, things like that. So it's really taking a look at the file as a whole. It treats the file as
file, right?
Yeah.
That's what it's, that was a great analogy right there.
Okay, good. I'm glad you understood that. Okay, so look at the notes, right? There are a lot more details here. I give you guys like this is the snapshot of, and the calculation, we talked about that. I think I gave you, and then, also certification, make sure that you understand the difference between false positive, false negative, and positive reports, what that means. Okay, so I list that out for you here. And then trend analysis, and then we touch a little bit on this, but there are some vulnerabilities in sub area like network, web, authentication, session hijack, and so on. Okay, so let's talk about your lab. We have a couple hours, so we should be all right. I revised this like 4 times. I had it originally written for last week. That was something else. I was gonna do a real website with the attack button. I'm like, if I don't want to floor them also. So we're just gonna do ourselves. It's gonna be quicker. Sometimes it gives you no results, and that happens to real life. So, all right. Get Kali, download it if you don't have it saved, right? Unpack it. So once I download Kali, just to recall, I'm gonna go to my downloads folder, right click the zip file, 7-zip, extract files. You can keep it on the download folder, right? And then open it, open the subfolder, double click the VBox file, the icon, let it boot, and you're gonna log in as Kali. Man, I did this with my CIS27 this last Monday. It's their first time using Kali. It's their second time using Linux. And I did the FTP lab with them, and I have them scan the FTP lab. So they're still trying to get used to using terminal, so they're getting there, but they like it. Okay, so we are on Kali. And let me close the notes, the assignment. See. And let's talk about the lab. So one of the things, this is kind of similar to my 27. I want to give you this so that way, if you ever need to work with FTP, you understand. Okay. So in order to set up FTP file server, I think FTP is just like underrated in most area. If you ever use Mozilla, right? They have public FTP. There's still a lot of companies service FTP, but anonymous a lot of the time is disabled. Okay, so in this lab, you are going to learn how to set up FTP web server, firewall, looking at ports, all of those things, Nmap, Nikto. I'm ambitious. What the heck? So, all right. So FTP is for file transfer. In Linux, you will use VSFTP, VSFTPD. This is a package, or what do you say? Yeah, it's a daemon to be able to have your FTP server. Okay, so in order to run the server, you use that package. All right, so once you're in, you're gonna do update, sudo app update. Always start with update, type in your password. This is gonna go for a few seconds, and I'm using like the same Kali as you with nothing in it yet. I tested this on my laptop and it was okay. So we shouldn't have any problems. All right, and then we are gonna install, right? So you can copy and paste this if you like, or you can type. So I install VSFTPD. Now, if you read their documentation that there was a flaw, right? That was with the version 2.3, and then I think they upgraded it now to 3.0. But we can never assume that vulnerability actually fully went away. Okay, So they said that it is secure, but there is a flaw with this package. That's the intention. And unlike my 27 class, right? In this, for you guys, what we're gonna do is we're gonna copy the configuration file of it, right? So that way so this is a good practice. When you modify Linux configuration file, it's gonna be conf, okay? You want to copy it first, so in case you screw up, you have the original to go back, because if you started messing around with the setting and it's not what you want, you can't revert it. You have to reinstall the whole system. Not good. Okay, so we're going to copy it. So the command is that you are going to copy the configuration file, right? And then you can give it the extension. That's the cool thing about Linux, is that you make it the original file. So basically it's a duplicate, but one is we're going to play with and the other is stay intact, and we can go back and we can put it back the way it was before if we need to. Okay. And then we are going to, now Kali out of the box doesn't have firewall. They did that for a reason, because sometimes scanners will get blocked, things will get blocked. So, but I want to show you how you can. I think I've done this before in my other classes if you had me. But you are going to install UFW, which is a firewall that's used in Debian Linux or in Linux. And what we're going to do is we're going to set rules, okay? And we're just going to open up our configuration file and we're going to play with it to see if, what gets kicked out and what doesn't. Okay. After you install, you're going to enable the firewall. Now, after you install, never assume that the firewall is available, right? And depending on the type of application, so in Linux, sometimes you enable, it doesn't mean that you start it. So in this case, it is active, it is enabled, but whenever we change it, we have to restart it. Okay, we have to restart the service. So at this point, we have the firewall in place and enable. We are going to allow these ports, okay? You know the FTP uses 21. By now, you should. If you don't, you need to learn your protocol and your port number, okay? So we have to enable 20 and 990. This is for TLS, okay? So because most FTP website is pushed through the web, and so what we want is we also want TLS for additional security, but also FTP. We're not using SSH with FTP, so we're using non-secure FTP at this point, okay? So I want to show you how you can add a rule for traffic. This allows you to connect to your own server locally, right? Even non-locally, remotely, you have to enable the port. Otherwise, nothing connects, okay? So it tells you that the rules are added. It's going to do version 4 and version 6. Okay, so once you add the rule, you are going to add additional ports. Now we are using 40,000 and 50,000. This is common in the practice for things that are that like FTP, or sometime if you do like secure onion, stuff like that, you want to use higher range port in non-common port range. Okay, so we are going to allow this port value as well. And you can disallow it later if you like, right? Once we open the port to use, and then when we don't use them, we can close them. So we added these rules. And then now we're going to check the status of our firewall. Okay, so there you go. That's how you can enable your install enable firewall and add the ports that you need for a certain service. In our case, we are using FTP, using VS FTPD. This is because that particular tool uses these ports and you have to enable them, right? And then we also allow these ports. These are for passive connection. Okay, active connection, common port, passive connection, uncommon ports. And then you have, so screenshot this, you can use your snip or you can take a screenshot on, just for this app. So how many rules are listed? Just count your rules. We added 4, so it should be 4. And it shows you allow here and from anywhere. Now, our rules are just general rule, right? We're not specific. So if you have a dedicated connection, you need to say from where, right? You just need to set the rules for that. Now, next, we're going to create a user. So this user is going to be the one that's connecting to the FTP site. And you're going to give it a password. So I'm just going to use CIS41A with an exclamation point. It's not going to blink the cursor, just type, press enter again. And then when you can fill this out or just press enter, 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 just leave it blank and then press yes to confirm all the information because it's just a test user, right? A real user would fill everything in. And then we confirm by pressing yes and press enter. So it creates the user. And you would add a user in Linux just like how you, like this, right? This particular user, I'm aiming it to use these directories. So that's next. So what I'm gonna do is I'm under the home directory. I'm gonna have this, I'm going to access the test user directory in the FTP. Okay. So I'm going to make those directory because ultimately a server is just a storage machine, right? And when you're dealing with uploading and downloading files, you're just creating storage for the user to share their files or get files. So you just have to set up the folders and control the permissions to those folders. Yes.
For the rules that we created, pretty much those ports are only allowed, right? So as an example, HTTPS, no access.
Yeah, 443, no.
So that's it's the foundation for what's allowed and what's not allowed.
Yeah. So you can also, so basically you start a firewall and you keep adding the allow rules. So you basically whitelist the rules. And then you disable them when you don't need it. You can disallow it. You can deny, right? You just have to go in and set the deny rule. If you want to blacklist something, you can, right? But yeah, that's just, those are the allowance. Okay. It's gonna, HTTP is automatically on already for the system because all systems have port 80 open. All systems have port 80 open.
Port 80 is HTTP, right?
So when we enable HTTP server, you'll be like, oh, it's just that. Yeah, we don't have to add port 80. Port 80 is already there. Yeah. All right, so we make the directory. Remember that I want to organize my file, right? And then I'm gonna use this chown. This, most of you already know this because you used Linux before. I'm gonna use it to change ownership for my folder that I have, okay, or directory. Okay. Then after that, I'm going to remove the write permission by using chmod. Okay, so with this lab, you know how to use firewall, change permission, and then control configuration file for control privilege to configuration file. But we'll see if it's effective. Okay. All right. So once we have the write permissions removed, so what that means is when I need write permission for the user to upload, right? And they can read to download, but they need to write to store. Okay, so if I remove that, they won't be able to upload. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to list the permission. You guys seen the LSL before already. We're going to do LSLA to look at a little bit more of the details in permissions for the file. Okay, so it's going to tell you the permissions group where we have nobody, no group. That's what we did earlier in the other steps. And then the timestamp for those directories that we have in FTP. Okay, under test user. So it asks you what is the permission for the test user directory. If you look at the test user directory here, what's the permission? Read, write, and execute. For what? No, but remember, what's this level? Here, right? The universe, right? What's the test user? Because we clear out the write permission for them. If you remove the write, right, sometimes it's also taking away the others. So when you're looking at the test user, so in Linux, it's broken into like 3 subparts, right? You got to take a look at like, you know, world, group, and user. Okay, so what is the permission for world? What is the permission for the group? And what's permission for the user?
The middle one, right?
Yeah.
And then the first one's user ended.
Mhm.
So what was that?
So the test user, because remember we did this, right? We removed the write permission for the FTP level because that's the parent level. So inside this folder, I'm going to have like download and upload, or I mean uploads. So I can control the subfolder, but I can, if I control the parent folder this way, I remove the write permission so they don't, you know, they can't upload. But if you can also add it. Okay, so note your permissions. And then permission for the root. The root should have everything. Full control. Everything. Read, write, execute. All right. Okay. So we're going to give them a directory called files under FTP. So we're going to make a directory called files under the FTP folder. And then we are going to list the permission again. Because files going to inherit whatever you set for FTP, right? Because that's the parent, that's the container rule, is that whatever you throw inside that container, it's going to inherit. What the heck? Let's do it here. So what? So here it shows my root. So the LSLA actually gives you a lot more details than doing LS. LS is just going to list the content. LSL is listing some of the property. LSLA is going to list all the properties or the attributes of it. Okay, then it answer what's the permission for the root, the nobody, no group. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create a file for this, that the user, and you're going to use the echo command. Echo does append, and the pipe here is just to connect to the next command. So you're using 2 commands in 1 line. So I'm creating a text file, and I'm going to append this text into that file, test.txt, and I'm going to put it in this folder. So after it creates it, it should give you the actual text content, whatever that you put in the string parameter here. So it's gonna say, oh, this file has this text. So answer, what is the output for that? Now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna nano into the configuration file and we're gonna reset the configuration. This is for the FTP server, right? When you install that server, it comes with the configuration file, the conf file, and it exists under the etc directory. So what we're gonna do is we want to use the text editor to go in and edit the file. This is why we copy it earlier, so we have an extra copy. So it's gonna look like this. You are going to use your arrow key to go down, right? And we are going to go to anonymous. We're gonna enable the anonymous. We're gonna see how that's gonna work. Right? My policy and my security policy, we shouldn't allow anonymous, but I wanted to test the vulnerable things, right? So I'm gonna see if it's actually, we can log in with anonymous or it's gonna even detect it with the script. And that's why I wanted to change this. Okay. And then what we're gonna do is we are going to, so here I enable yes. Some of it you just check and some of it you have to modify. So local enable is already yes. That allows you to have your local user actually log into the server from that system. And then I'm gonna go down to write enable. I'm gonna uncomment that. Take out the hash tag and then go down to chroot local. And if you want anonymous to upload, you would enable that, but we're okay with the upload part. So let's see, chroot local, I think it's further down. Username, whoever, no, we don't need that. And then if you want timeout, you can modify that as well. So there are a lot of already parameters in there. If you want to modify it, you just like,
Further down.
yeah.
Okay.
ASCII, you see deny email, and email, there it is. Chroot enable the list. Yeah, local user. I wonder if we have to do the chroot list enable. That's okay. So it's in two location, chroot local user, chroot local user. So I'm gonna enable that here. Yeah. And then chroot list enable. This one. And then I'm gonna go to the end and you're gonna add those things to the end. The number 29, all those things. So you're gonna highlight this. I don't think you can paste it, you have to type it though. Okay, so you're gonna do user subtoken. Gotta type exactly like that, right? $sign and then capitalize user. And then on the next one, we're gonna do local root is, we're gonna point to the path of our user home directory. So home and then user FTP, which is what we created. So that means that when they log in, it's gonna tie their files to the FTP directory that we created. And then earlier we enabled these ports for passive connection on our firewall. So we're gonna set it. passive min port. So it's gonna be in range 40,000 to 50,000. Oops. And then our port is gonna be 40,000. And then your passive max, that's the end of that range, is gonna be 50,000. And then we want to, for it to check the user list, whichever user we added in the list, it's going to check to allow login. Okay, enable, and that is yes. And then we are gonna do user list file is at the path etc vs ftpd user list. And then we are not gonna deny, so user list deny. We're not gonna deny anybody right now. Is no. So once I'm done with all the bottom settings, right, in the configuration file, you're gonna press Control X. And it's gonna ask you, do you wanna save your file? Press Y for yes. And then press enter. Yeah, I don't know what happened in my other class. They couldn't save it as a Kali user. Maybe they're using a different version of the VM. They had to access root. All right. So once I have this, right, I'm going to add the user that I created into the user list. Because earlier we created the user, we gotta add it to the FTP user list. So we're gonna do an echo test user. Whatever your username is, you put it into the quotation marks. And that's the parameter that's gonna use to plug in. So we created the test user. And then anytime that you modify your server configuration, you're gonna restart it. Okay, now we are gonna look at our IP address, because if we can connect it with the loop address, with the local host name, local host system name, or we can use the regular IP address. So the IP address, and I think now it's standard for Kali Linux, they're using the same, right? You should get almost the same. So I have 10.0.2.15, which is, make sure that you look in S0, right? This is my loop back. So put down your IP address so that way you can plug it into the future step. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna type the command FTP dash P, and I want to say space dash P, and I can use 10.0.2.15. Now, if this doesn't resolve, you can always use the loop back. Sometimes it doesn't resolve. Okay. If it resolves, it's going to give you the code 220. If you get 500, that means there's an error. Okay. It uses the same HTTP connection code. So here you can use the user that you created, test user, right? And then the password that you made. And if it's successfully logged in, it tells you that here, 230. If it failed to log in, right, you got to repeat that step, the connection step, and then log in. Okay. So you can also use FTP localhost or the loopback address. It is connecting to itself, so it should be, because we're testing right now. So now once you're in FTP, it's going to look like this. If you need to exit, you type bye, B-Y-E. You get back to your terminal. Okay. Now let's test anonymous user. So I'm gonna repeat the FTP to my system like this, and my username is anonymous. Right? See how it tells me permission denied? Even though I changed my configuration file, right? But why do you think it denies anonymous there? In my configuration file at the top, I said anonymous, yes, login, yes. Why do you think it denies my permission here? Because I'm not on what? On the user list. On the bottom of your configuration file, you said that, oh, check the user list. Only the user on the user list is gonna be accessing. So if we want, yeah, test user was the only one, right? So anonymous, even though we said they should be logged in at the top, we enable yes, it wasn't, it checked against the user list for the access and it kicks it out. Okay. So now let me log back in as the other user, right? Test user. And then the password. So once I'm in, I'm gonna go ahead and access my files. So I'm gonna go CD files. And I'm in the files directory, right? And then I'm gonna go ahead and do a get test.txt. And it received, right? We created that file for the user to download. Okay. So get is to download, right? When you want to upload, you do a put in FTP. So you would do a put file name, yes.
What's the password for testing? Is it specified?
I used the CIS41A, but I don't know, did you create a password? You can always make another user, just add a user add and then do the echo user to the user list. Yeah, what, if you didn't type anything, then it's blank. If you just press enter, 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 then it's just blank. And then, so I'm able to get the file and it tells me the bytes of the file, my file size, right? I download it. So that's how you download from FTP in command line. All right. And then you type to exit the CLI for FTP, you just type byte. Okay, so we did part A. Now we're gonna do web server. Web server is really easy. There's just a few things that you need. There's more to this, like if you want to have an index page and blah, blah, blah. I did say that, but here, but you know, all right. So we are gonna install Apache 2. Right, sudo app install Apache 2. This is for web services. This is like IIS in Windows. And then you just press yes to proceed for the install. And so I put some information for Apache here. And then you need to run Python with ngx for web service. If you're using Python only, Python actually have a package where you make it a web server using the library, but we already have these tools, so you're just gonna press Y for the installation for Apache and the other package. It tells me that, you know, even with that, it has some kind of bad syntax in the library. It's just another coded file, so. And then I am going to activate my web server using port 9000. So you gotta plug in your IP address here. It's not gonna work, okay? And we need to bind it. So 10.0.2.15. So it's activated now, right? And then what you want to do is you want to open another terminal. And then you want to, you can echo this. So basically you're making an index file for your page. I tested this yesterday and it wasn't serving it, so. And then to connect, you just simply do HTTP, right? Your address, or just, you can use localhost, or your loopback should be okay. 0.2.15, and then port 9000. Oh, why is it not? Let's use the loopback. HTTP 127.0.0. Let me repeat this. Let's bind it again.
So there's point us, will it take a while or is it instantaneous?
Sometime it takes a while. Let's bind it to the loopback and see. I'm gonna bind it to the loopback. And before testing it in here, let's open up your web. It's gonna run, that's your web server running. And then I'm gonna check with my loopback. Yeah, it's not connecting. I did this yesterday and it did. So. It's HTTP though. Yeah, so once it's on, it's serving. It's already telling you it's serving here. To click this link. See if it opens. It tells me it's not able to connect. Yeah, but it's not connecting though.
Can you change it from your IP to your mobile?
Yeah. You got in with your IP? Good. Oh, you got error 404 with the loopback?
I did this one with my IP, don't still on that one.
No, mine had an error too.
It's not connecting. Oh,
Huh?
forgot firewall.
Oh,
I was like, yeah, what's stopping it? Yeah, so we can add it. So sudo ufw allow 9000. I did this at home yesterday without adding it and it worked. Like it worked. See, that's why I'm like, I don't know. I don't know when I come here, sometimes it's like, oh. So sudo ufw allow. Let's do allow 9000. Okay, so
So should I stop my process of it so continuing?
yeah, you can stop it. So I have 9000 added. Actually 9000 TCP, right? This is only adding the version 6. Okay, so let's see now. Yeah, I'm getting a 404. Oh, because is it trying to resolve with the HTTPS? It's doing that. Yeah, it's trying to connect, but it's doing the secure connection. You can see right here, SSL. And then it's just not, it's pending. So this is it's a 400. Anyway. You can still attack it or scan it. Yeah, I'm getting a 404 also. Let me see why. Yes, it's showing you the status. Message not found, get bad request version. Message file not found. So it's trying to respond. You can see it, right? Question. Yep. Gotta put the port in, people. Port.
What was the HTTP?
HTTP, not HTTPS, because we never enable ports for HTTPS. And then put in your IP address and then the port 9000, colon 9000. Should say this. Python 3, I'm telling you.
HTTP slash or
Yeah, so HTTP colon // then your IP address. And then 9000. So if you added the firewall rule, right, it should pass the 9000 at this point.
so it's IP address colon 9000.
Yeah. I rebind it though. Yeah. So.
Mine's showing a lot of things.
Well, yeah, if it doesn't resolve your index page, you just redo your index page, right? I did the step 46 and then you open Firefox and you browse it.
Showing a dash logout, dash RC, all those.
Yeah.
Is that all?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's your server should show the log of it. Yeah, because you have 4 requests and 4 reply. That's the logs of your activity on your web server.
Okay.
All right. So now you know how to put up a web server in Linux. Simple one at least. All right. Now we're gonna run Nmap. So you can open another terminal. And then we are going to scan. And you can scan localhost or you can scan with an IP as long as you have an address to the name, right? So I'm going to check. And what this does is it's gonna do the bound scan. Actually, no, it's doing the service scan. I type bound scan. It's actually service scan. And then we're gonna do a 0.2.15. Now, if you use a loopback, I think it's quicker, because it's checking itself, but because we are only one hop from ourselves, so it's like fast. Right? So it tells me that I have my TCP port open for 21, that's FTP. We enable that, we know for sure, and it tells me the version. See that? It also tells me that I have an HTTP port 9000, which we did, right? And this is a simple HTTP server running Python. It's exactly what we did. So the scanner picked that up. What you're doing with this is you're gonna check this version, and whatever products that they use, you're gonna look for the vulnerability, and that takes research. Okay. And so it tells me that I'm using these services. These are the type of packages that it's used with those services and the OS. And then it tells me that this is the amount of port that's closed, 998. So answer those questions. And then it tells me the ports that are open. But you notice that it didn't pick up 40,000 and 50,000 because it's mostly using 21 for FTP, right? Earlier, because we have a user connecting to the FTP site that service through, because the 990 and the 20 was basically for authentication. The 21 was for file transfer. So it's only able to see 21 and 9000 on the scanner, even though we have other ports that are enabled, right? Now, if you do a detailed scan, that might pick up. Aggressive scan will pick it up, right? So now what you're going to do is you are going to do an anonymous script with an IP address. And I'm only showing you a little bit, but you can go look at Nmap tools and be able to get more. They do a good job with like listing all of that. And 10.0.2.15. So here I'm getting a little bit of a different information. This tells me a little, like it's still FTP, but here it's the listener, so that's the server side. I'm not getting any anonymous information because remember earlier when we logged into anonymous, it kicked us out, right? It tells us no, login failed, right? It still showed the FTP server, but you can't do anything to the FTP server. Like I couldn't upload, I couldn't download because anonymous was not on the user list. We created a user list for our FTP, even though we enabled the configuration file to allow anonymous login. It refers to the user list, so that therefore we couldn't log in. Okay, so answer the questions there. Says, does the system allow we don't see any kind of thing for anonymous. If it does allow, you're gonna see that there. It's gonna say anonymous login enable or anonymous login available or something like that. Yes.
Can you elaborate more on the Nmap SC and then IP address? What exactly?
Yeah, so basically you're doing a service scan here. And you're doing a more of like a summary service scan. It's not, and all of these extension, if you go to their website, they give you the details, right? For the option. Now you can also do like a -T for the second option. Basically, you're saying that I want a scan to output this way. So what we want is these options really indicate the type of scan. So I'm looking for certain services for that target that I'm scanning. So this is your target, right? And these are the options on how you want the output or what you want to see.
Like before and
yeah, you can scan. So in general, all the scans, when you're getting a summarized scan, it's going to tell you how many ports is scanned, how many, or I'm sorry, how many ports are open and closed. That's the basic. And then the target address that's scanned, and then the time that it's scanned. The other one, when we did the SVSC right here, what we're seeing is that it's scanning specifically for the ports and the service that's used. That's how you're able to see HTTP simple version 0.6 versus when we're running the script, we're only looking at to see if there's a script, there's anonymous login to any of the service that we have for the server.
So if there was a, as I said, an anonymous login, you would see.
Yeah, it's gonna tell you like right here, it's gonna say anonymous login available enabled.
Would you give the IP address of the OS or just?
No, it's just gonna add that line. So here, it doesn't. Yeah, if it does allow it, you would see it listed. Now, on this one, when you're looking at the service, it tells you more, right? Like this is what we see as a summarized scan. So that's the SC is a summarized scan, not a detail scan. So it gives you the overall, like what was scanned, how many ports are open, how many ports are closed, what's the OS, and so on. Now, on the Windows side, you can use Nmap, which does the same thing, but then it lets you click like different tabs. So some of you have done this in my class before, right? So in 27, I also spent some time on it. But yes, just you can see that it's like this. So the Nmap is very popular, right? If you tell people that you know how to do vulnerability scan, the first thing they're gonna ask you, oh, do you use Nmap? Just say, yeah, I use it with the script. I'm gonna show you where you can find it. It's awesome. Like, I love it so much. So if you search Nmap NSE, there's a whole scripting engine that's made for this. So, and you can go to the reference docs in different languages. So the Windows side is the Nmap. Okay, if you like the graphical user interface, or you can use command line. Here's the download version for all OSs. So if you go here, you can find different engines. So there are scripts that are written for different things. You can use it for attacks, scans, all kinds of things. See? Time out. Like there's so many things because itself is a script. So there are ways that you can also download it. Yeah, go to the reference guide.
So Professor, in that case, do employers expect us to memorize the majority, or they give us, well, you know what, you can just look it up.
Most of the things we look up.
So they don't mind, or let's say they ask.
Unless you use it frequently, then you're gonna remember.
Oh, right, yeah.
And nobody's like, you're not gonna. There's like 604 NSE script. I'm not gonna remember every single one of them, so you can go to the libraries and there it is, right? So it tells you kind of like a summary if you want to do Bitcoin. There's a lot of stuff. It's lots. It's wonderful because they really maintain this over times and it's always growing. So you always go in and check out what they got. Now, if you know how to use Python, you can bring this in. You can use Nmap API with the script, like in your script. So that's a cool thing. Like you can make your own script. That's what I'm saying. Like this is like just out of the box, right? And then you have to use command line with it, with the application. But if you, like, for example, if I'm assessing the same company like 4 times a year, right? If I make my own script, I just rerun that same script. Boom, it's done, right? Like I don't have to go in and like install Nmap and then add the parameters to run the application with the script. That just takes time. I'll be like, oh, just run the Python file. Or you can automate the Python file too, like at startup.
So you can pretty much automate what we're doing right now on script.
Yes.
Really? So script is just a number of commands that you do that is executed.
Yes, I can automate authentication. Yeah, in 5 lines in Python. SSH authentication language. Yeah, too bad. Like I keep trying to run CIS30B, which is the Python for networking. We spend a lot of time on automation in that class because that's really what it's for, right? So one of my students, she interviewed for one of the job, and when they read her resume, she had listed that she had taken the class, and they asked her about automation. A lot of companies do now because you can automate a lot of stuff. You can automate like install with script. Some people use shell. A lot of people use shell because they're old school. But now like you have all of these API, you have all of these applications that can talk to your application. So why not? Right? When you guys use like login with Google, that's an API. You know how when you log into a website, you say, oh, use my Google credential or Facebook or Instagram. You click one of those options, right? Like for example, I want to log into Bitly and it tells me, oh, you can use your Google account. I click that button. That's an API. That's a script. That's a application programming interface. It's a program that talks to another program.
How many lines does that script do?
For authentication, not too long. We've done something similar in one of my classes, like log into multiple places. So when I did the exercise with my class in 30B, we were able to log into so you basically hard coded your generic password or your password, and it's just gonna pass it to all the systems. So for example, if like all my systems use the same password, you just log it into like 40 systems. So that, yeah, you can do that for Raspberry Pi or, So basically you're telling it like how it prompt the password, because sometimes it will prompt you as a username, but in Linux, it uses the wiggly line and then the user account. So you just have to set it up that way. If it asks this, then plug this in. That's it.
You pretty much elaborate more on that on 30.
In 30A is like generic
Intro?
intro to programming, but 30B, 30C is really about like scripting for this. I do spend a week on Nmap with NSE and then Burp Suite. Yeah. So I do my lab specifically with Python for that. Like how do you use, and we use Ubuntu, but you can use Kali with it.
When is 30C?
I'm going to try to run it in fall again. Yeah. Every time I try to run the smaller classes, like the certificate classes, some university takes that actually. They transfer those credits, but some don't.
Didn't you mention, I believe, Cal State's number of
Mhm.
Mm,
Yeah.
very nice.
You can choose like which 30 that you want, like, because they'll do a Python and an intermediate Python. So as long as you can write objectively your script with all the components. Okay, so this one you scan for your port, and then you want to use your CIDR here because, that's where you get your IP address. So this allows you to scan for port 80 with the range. And I can do this to a text file. The reason why, so let's do the Nikto one. We already did this one, right? So I want to talk to you guys about Nikto. You still have an hour, so we should be able to finish.
Yeah, he's giving me an error code on this thing.
Oh, really? For install?
No, the number 56.
Okay, let me take a look. So we're gonna install Nikto, put in our Kali password. And then you are going to scan it. So Nikto is very popular for web application assessment or system that run web server, especially if you use for HTTPS and so on. So all this says here is like, oh, so there is a little plus sign that says 0 host. It's trying to scan this. Now we're gonna kind of narrow it down to, so we're gonna use Nmap and we're gonna output that to a text file. And you can try using your loopback if it doesn't work, but ideally you should have a target address. So in this one, I'm using Nmap and I'm gonna output it to a text file called Nikto scan. And basically it's gonna scan for port 80 only. Okay. And it tells me it's closed. And the reason for that is mostly because we didn't add it to our firewall rule, right? And then after we had created the text file, we want to, here I tell you what it looks for. So basically, this should be text document. In this sense, it's the up is just gonna look for the up post, and this is gonna print out the second word for each line, so that way we can identify some of the things more quicker. So when you did this, basically you're reading the file. And then we're gonna cat the file. So we're filtering out some of the things. What happened?
If it cancel, that happens.
Okay, so the target, we know that this is our target, which is our IP address, the target information. And so you can go a lot further with this, right? And here I put down that you can use the open source information to find additional CVE. So if it's able to give you CVE that's displayed, then you will be able to reference it. Okay, that's the point. Now you said 56 is not working. Oh, replace this with your IP. I had used, they block it. I tested it at home one day, it worked, and then the next day when I tested it. So put your IP address here.
For the cat target asks what information is displayed, just the IP address you think?
Yeah, it's only able to give you the IP address that was printed. There was not a lot that it puts on the file. You can always go and read the. Oh, invalid output format. I didn't like the format. Let me go see their format parameter. Hold on a second. Click over.